Welcome to This Explainer. Let's just jump right in. Today, we're looking at a sudden bomb-like explosion in Ethiopia that literally grounded international flights. And honestly, it revealed a mind-bending geological mystery happening right beneath our feet. We're talking about forces so massive, they're actively rewriting the map of our planet.
Now you've got to understand, this wasn't your run-of-the-mill geological event. On November 23rd, the Haile Gubbi volcano in Ethiopia suddenly erupted. The crazy part, it happened after 12,000 years of recorded silence. Think about that. For over 100 centuries, this volcano was completely dormant. So this sudden awakening, an absolute shock to the whole world.
And the sheer, terrifying power of this blast was just undeniable. Locals actually reported that it sounded exactly like a bomb going off. The explosion was so violently intense, it instantly shot an ash cloud 50,000 feet straight up into the atmosphere. Just to put that into perspective, this ash plume was so incredibly massive that satellites could easily track it all the way from space.
What started as a localized event immediately unleashed global chaos. The explosion was heard from cities 190 kilometers away. Neighboring Djibouti even felt the earthquake shockwaves. But the real nightmare was the ash. It blew across Oman and Yemen, reaching all the way to Pakistan and India, which forced major flight cancellations in Delhi and across the Middle East. And it didn't even stop there. That very same ash cloud started creeping toward China and Myanmar.
So you might be wondering, why does an ash cloud cause so many flight cancellations? Well, volcanic ash isn't just soft dust. It's literally tiny bits of jagged rock, glass, and sharp crystals. If that gets sucked into a jet engine, it can easily trigger a total shutdown right in midair. Even worse, it acts like razor blades, or really heavy-duty sandpaper, against the outside of the plane. In the absolute worst-case scenario, the ash actually sands down the cockpit windows so intensely that it gets totally scratched over, leaving the pilots completely blinded.
Back down on Earth, the immediate aftermath at Ground Zero was intense. The Afdera region of Ethiopia is only about 28 kilometers from the volcano, and several villages there were completely blanketed in this thick, heavy ash. But, miraculously, 0 human lives were lost during this catastrophe. Why? Simply because the extreme remoteness and the sheer harshness of this specific environment meant that nobody was living right up against the volcano's edge.
Section 1. Earth's hottest alien landscape. Inside the Danakil Depression.
Let's zoom out from the breaking news for a second and look at the bizarre, extreme environment where this actually took place. Because honestly, the location is just as fascinating as the eruption itself. It's called the Danakil Depression, and it's widely considered the hottest place on Earth. It sits below sea level, and temperatures regularly skyrocket to between 50 and 55 degrees Celsius. It gets basically zero rain. But because it's so geologically active, scientists and tourists absolutely flock there. It looks like a totally alien world, covered in bright, yellowish, greenish, and bluish pools, all created by these intense, bubbling chemical reactions.
So looking at this extreme, boiling landscape, we have to ask, why now? Why did the Haile Gubbi volcano suddenly decide to violently erupt after 12,000 long years of absolute silence? What exactly is happening underground?
Section 2. The Big Reveal. A continent tearing itself apart.
You see, the sudden violent eruption of this volcano isn't just some random act of nature. It's actually a direct result of the African continent actively breaking apart into 2 separate pieces right before our eyes. To really understand how this works, we need a quick history lesson. You probably remember this term from science class, Pangea. Millions of years ago, all of Earth's landmass was combined into the single massive supercontinent. Over time, it fractured and those pieces drifted apart to form the modern continents we know today. The tectonic plates under our feet are constantly in motion.
And this drifting process, it's not a new phenomenon for this part of the world. At one point in history, the African and Arabian tectonic plates were actually locked together. As they gradually moved apart, the massive rift that opened up between them literally filled with water, forming what we now know as the Red Sea and the Gulf of Eden. Now, right beneath the Haile Gubbi volcano, there is an incredible clash of forces going on. It sits at what's called a triple junction in the Afar Rift. The African plate itself is splitting into the Nubian plate and the Somali plate, and those two are pulling away from each other. But at the exact same time, the Arabian plate is pulling away from both of them. So you have 3 massive chunks of the Earth's crust actively pulling apart in completely different directions.
But this local tension in Ethiopia is just one piece of a much larger puzzle known as the East African Rift.
Geologists are currently monitoring a massive 6,000-kilometer fault line that stretches all the way from the Red Sea straight down through Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, Malawi, and right into Mozambique. This incredibly long, continuous line is the exact boundary where the African continent will eventually snap and divide completely in two.
And because this process has been grinding away beneath the surface for so long, it's literally sculpted the geography of Africa. Iconic landmarks like Mount Kilimanjaro and Mount Kenya, Ethiopia's famous Erta Ale lava lake, and super deep bodies of water like Lake Malawi, Tanganyika, Albert, and Kivu, none of those would be there otherwise. They only exist because the continent is actively tearing itself apart along this very rift.
Now, before you start worrying about half of Africa floating away tomorrow, we have to remember we're dealing with geological timescales here. Scientists estimate it'll take somewhere between 5 and 10 million years for the continent to fully split. Right now, these gigantic continental plates are pulling away from each other at a rate of just 2 to 5 centimeters per year. To put that into perspective for you, that is basically the exact same speed that your fingernails grow.
Section 3. The Geological Future. Witnessing Earth reshape in real time.
But even though this process is incredibly slow, again, moving at the speed of growing fingernails, it still triggers sudden, extremely violent events that we can witness in real time. Literally, none of what just happened in Ethiopia is unexpected. When continents shift and crack, all that built-up tension has to be released somehow. As this massive rift continues to pull apart, geologists tell us we should absolutely expect an increasing number of earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and sudden, deep rifts tearing right across the ground in this region.
We are literally living through this timeline right now. Back in 2005, a staggering 60-kilometer-long fissure suddenly ripped open in the Ethiopian region in just 10 days. Fast forward to July 2025, the nearby Erta Ale volcano erupts, and scientists start spotting ominous white smoke coming from our supposedly dormant Haile Gubi volcano. Then, November 23rd hits, and Haile Gubi violently explodes. Guys, we are watching the physical structure of a continent break apart right in front of us.
Which leaves us with this final, thought-provoking question to wrap up our explainer today. If the Earth can violently rip itself open, end a 12,000-year silence with a bomb-like explosion, and ground international flights across multiple countries in a matter of days, what other massive planetary transformations are happening right beneath our feet, just waiting to reveal themselves? It's a fascinating and, honestly, humbling reminder of the sheer power of our planet. Thanks so much for diving into this incredible science with us today.